Hello and welcome to Lesson 2 of National 5 Computing Science Database Design and Development. Today we're looking at end user and functional requirements. So what you're going to learn, first of all, what those terms mean, you're going to learn how to gather these requirements, and then how those requirements are used when creating your database. End user requirements. This basically means the people who are using my database, what do they need? They are called the end users. They are the people who end up using the database. What they need to do are their requirements. On the other hand, the functional requirements, they're basically the same thing, but it's the database that needs to do these things. The database needs to do these things in order to satisfy the customers, the users, the people who use the database. The users have requirements. The database needs to meet these requirements. They are the functional requirements. And this would include the tables, the fields, and all the searches and sorts that the database must perform in order to satisfy what the user needs to do. So what's the point in gathering these requirements? Well, first of all, it helps you design your database. It clarifies what you need to make. It identifies the features that you need to implement in the database. And finally, when you've finished making the database, you can look back on these requirements to figure out whether your database is fit for purpose. If it meets the requirements, it's fit for purpose. Otherwise, it's not fit for purpose and you need to go back and fix it. Let's look at an example. Let's look at the SQA's own documentation, the National 5 course specification. It's on page 77. Here's a really good example provided by the SQA so you know it's the right sort of thing you should be looking at. Now, I'm not going to read all of this to you, but feel free to pause the video, have a read through all of these pieces of information, read the example as well as all the speech bubbles. And then we'll go and take a look at the solutions. Let's go. The solutions. Now, how do we come up with these solutions? Well, it's all in this text, this example. It's the sales staff who want to view these details. It's these things that they're asking for. So let's take a look at how we would write this down. We would put the heading, end user requirements, and we'd say who it is that wants to do it and what it is they want to do. They want to see details of cars by performing a number of different searches. Here's the sort of searches they would perform. They would search for the make and model, search for the color, and so on. The results would display this information as well. All of this is mentioned in these speech bubbles, all of it. And it mentions the sorting order that the end users want to perform as well. Next, we'll look at functional requirements. These are the things the database has to do. So it's what it has to store. How many tables? In this case, 2 tables, one for car details and one for branch details. And every single database that you ever have to analyze or come up with functional requirements for, they will all need primary keys, and there will be a foreign key to link any tables. So we've mentioned the tables that are required. We also need to mention the fields. And in order to satisfy the user requirements, we need to perform simple and complex queries and sorts as well. In this case, a complex sort. We'll take a look at queries in more detail in a couple of lessons, but for now, this is just the functional requirements. Let's look at another example. This is the dog walker example. So the business, they want a relational database to store the details of the dog walkers they employ and the dogs that the walkers take out. The owner of the business will be the only user, so the owner is the only end user of the database. They had this to say. I need to be able to search for an employee either by the first name, surname, or even their address. This is giving us hints to the fields that we require: first name, surname, address. I should find their phone number. That's another field we need to store, so I can call them up if there's an emergency. This is a search as well. I should find their phone number. That's a search. I should also be able to find information about dogs. Could be another search, such as their name. That's a field we'll have to store. Their breed. That's another one. And who takes them for walks. This implies the foreign key here. This should say it would be good. Let me fix that. There we go. There was never a mistake here. It would be good to sort the information in alphabetical order. This is so explicit that it's a sort. In order of breed of dog. So how would we write this down as end user requirements and functional requirements? Boom. Here we go. Here's the end user requirements first. Apologies if this text is a bit too small. The owner should be able to display details of employees, that's the dog walkers, by performing searches including first name, surname, and addresses. And the results should display all this information as well as the phone number. The owner should be able to display the details of dogs including name, breed, walker who takes them out. The owner would also like to sort the information in alphabetical order of dog breed. Where did we get all this information? here. It's all in this information, all in this text here. Let's look at functional requirements. These are the tables that are required. So we need dog walkers and dogs. Every table needs a primary key. We will need a foreign key to link the tables. As I mentioned, every single time you have a task like this, you'll have to mention these two lines. The dog walker table will have the following fields. The ID, that's the primary key. The forename, surname, telephone number, the address. These are all the pieces of information that was mentioned here. The end user mentioned all these things. The dog table will have the following fields. The ID, the dog name, the breed, and here's the foreign key, the walker ID. Simple queries will be used to search the dog walker table. Simple sort will be used in the dog breed field in the dog table. And that is it. That is how you analyze a database, coming up with functional requirements and end user requirements. This might not make the most sense right now, but the more you get into designing and implementing databases, the more this will make sense. So we may have to come back to this in a later lesson. So I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope you've had some rock solid information planted in your brains.